Good morning again. I hope everyone enjoyed their coffee and that they're even more awake than, I hope you're more awake than what you were before. Before we had an obituary, the so-called death of the article, and now we're here, we have a birth announcement. So we have a full life cycle here in front of us. My name is Meredith Artley. I'm the Vice President and Managing Editor for CNN Digital. We're going to talk about live blogging, that speedy, immediate publishing of news as it happens. We have a wonderful panel here. Starting right here on my right, Mary Hockaday is the head of the BBC newsroom. Ingrid Vergara is the editor-in-chief of lefigaro.fr. Kate Fairhurst is the Vice President International for ScribbleLive. Juliette Hollier-Larousse is the Deputy Editor-in-Chief of the AFP. And Douglas Arellanes, did I pronounce that right, Douglas? And this guy Bertrand, who we all know and love, are going to talk about something that GEN is doing. So we'll go in that order. Let's start by welcoming Mary up to the podium, please.
Okay, good morning, bonjour. I'm Mary Hockaday. I look after the newsroom for the BBC. So I'm going to be talking about the whole issue of live blogging and microblogging from the point of view of a big mainstream news organization where our task is to reach as many people as we can on the big stories of the day and the age. And I'm going to really talk a little bit about what's been our journey exploring and experimenting with live blogging and finding that it really is a very, very powerful tool for us in terms of covering breaking news stories and the biggest stories that emerge. Is it possible to make it fill the screen or not? No? Okay, so this is really just to the point that last year, a very, very big news year, we found that we could bring very, very big audiences through our live pages, our live blogging, to some of the notable stories of the year for us. And at this point, I'd really like to say that just as this morning, I think we decided that we weren't at a funeral, so now I don't really think we're at a christening. I'm not even sure that we're at a first birthday, maybe toddlerhood. In some ways, maybe it's a 10th birthday. The business of reporting using short form and immediate text and news elements has been with us for a while, but there's no doubt that in the past year or so, it really has come of age. So, how do we do it? One of the first things to say is that for us, we find that one really important approach to live blogging and covering stories in that way is to see it as part of what we do in the round. So this is our homepage. You've got still the big story, the main story, the right through. You've got the offer of the other stories of the day. But in the top right-hand corner, you have what we call our live page widget. And that's a window on the live page activity that I'll show you in full in a moment. But even on this front page, you can see the main story. We have the ticker still, again, conveying the breaking news lines. We have the live updates flowing through dynamically, and then a link to the live page. And if you click on the live page, it takes you through to this sort of format. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. Again, one of the things crucially we're able to do with our live page is bring the live blogging alongside complementing our 24/7 television coverage. So you see the video, you see the streaming of our news channels, and then alongside it and companion to it, the microblogging and the live blogging of all the different elements. It's worth just pausing for a moment to go back in time. This is how it looked a couple of years ago. As you can see, it's less rich, it's thinner. We weren't combining the video with the text. You had to click each time to refresh it. We've come a long way in just a couple of years. But even before this, we were doing reporter logs and time-stamped short-form copy on stories. So as I say, we've all, I think, been grappling and emerging with this format for some time. And this is where we are now. This is a live page that we did recently on the public sector strike that we had in Britain. And just to highlight some of the key elements, Up at the top, we pull out the key points. It's all the time trying to get the balance, I think, between the emerging, the latest, the snippet, the latest fact, the latest detail, but also allowing readers to have a sense of the story as it's building and the things that we judge as professional journalists are perhaps the most important emerging details on a story. So we have the key points, we have the live TV feed, and then, as you can see on the left-hand side, the various elements that build up our live page. So the live text and the input from our writers and our journalists. We pull in the best tweets or emails that we're receiving from our users, or tweets or links to other organizations and their news coverage, attempting to give a really rounded view of the emerging story. One of the things that I would like to draw attention to about our live page is that we regard it as authored. You probably can't see very well, but just on the left, in the red strap where it says live text, you can see the names. We don't byline every story, but we do byline our live pages because they are journalistic products. They're not random selections. It's not an automatic feed. It is a curated selection of the elements that we think best help tell a story. And one of the things that we've also experimented with is the style and the tone. For us, we found that in the end, a style that is accessible but pretty straightforward is the best way for us to go, and it fits with our brand. I know other organizations go for perhaps a more informal or a chattier style, but for us, this is what's working. And I think it's also just worth highlighting that it can take as much skill to write a really good single sentence as it can to write a full story. We found that in the end we have given this task to some of our best and crispest communicators and make sure that it's in line with the quality that we try to offer with everything that we do. I've been showing you how we display our live page within the website, but of course also it's a format that lends itself very well to display on mobile. And I've been showing you a format where we're pulling together all the elements of what we do, including video, but for those who want to, it's also the way that we feed our Twitter accounts. I hope that many of you are followers of BBC Breaking or BBC News or BBC World. The copy and the short form that we feed through into our live page also finds its way onto our Twitter accounts. And for people who want to experience simply the flow of different stories and different coverage, it's a really strong offer. We did at one point in the last year pilot what we were calling live page always on. Generally, we run the live pages on the big stories. There are days when we run more than one. We can get them up very quickly. There are some that then lived for days. The riots last year in England, or what was happening in Egypt last year. We would run a live page for several days, but very much focused on a particular story, and maybe offering 2 or 3 live pages if there were several big stories. We experimented with what we called live page always on, where we were feeding in all our news stories, all breaking copy on a very, very wide selection. And in the end, we found that it was serving a really minority audience of, if you like, real news nuts, real news nerds, people who wanted to have all the news flowing past them 24/7. That's part of our audience, but it's not our broad mainstream audience. So we've in the end decided that we focus on live pages for the big stories, but we do use the same treatments and the same breaking news lines to feed through into our Twitter accounts, where people who really want to follow all the stories as they emerge can do that. And I think the next step for us, and I'm sure for others in this space, is tagging and personalization. So that's something of how we organise ourselves in London, but of course we couldn't do it if we hadn't also done a lot of work with our correspondents to get them to think and work in a different way. We are a multimedia newsroom, television, radio, and also digital. One of the things we've done in just the last few months is make very clear that the first task of any of our reporters on a story is to get in some short copy. We have mechanisms and production flows now that mean they can feed that into our production systems in London, and we can immediately use that copy in a live page, into Twitter, into our ticker. It's breaking news that can be used by television and radio as well. So we've made a shift in our ways of working to make that work. And it's absolutely habitual now for most, not yet all, but most of our correspondents, whether they're in the field in the UK or abroad. Just briefly then, we're moving, I think some of you know, but not all of you. This is going to be our new home from later this year. We're taking BBC News back to the original home of the BBC at Broadcasting House, just north of Oxford Street. And the blue lit up area is where we have been able to build a big new newsroom, which is extremely exciting, if slightly daunting in terms of moving everybody there. And this is the new newsroom, which is really just to show you that we have a chance to rethink and reorganize how we work and how we sit the teams together. You may not be able to see so well, but in the middle is a sort of double horseshoe desk, and this is our news desk, and we are putting at the heart of the news desk people and roles who are going to be working on live and social for our digital platforms in a way that we've not been able to do before. Just nearly at the end here, but one of the other things to say about our live pages is, as well as pulling together the breaking news lines and elements of a story, we also use it to link off to the best of our additional added value content, which might be a graphic, it might be a write-through, it might be a piece of analysis from one of our correspondents on the story. And thinking back to the session this morning, I think it's all of us grappling with this way to combine the immediate and the short form with all the other ways of storytelling and actually the other aspects that I think audiences still have a hunger for. And on the visual side of that, we are in the process of appointing a new visual journalism editor, and I'll be making that appointment just in four weeks or so, which links back to everything we were talking about yesterday. Phil Fernley yesterday showed you the overall Olympic offer, but again worth pointing out that the live page format is not just the preserve of news, and it's something that our colleagues in sport use and have used for some time in terms of live reporting of big matches and big sport events. So that really is a brief canter through some of the issues that we are trying to tackle. And I've talked about tools and techniques and processes, but really in the end, the most important thing for me in all of this is still our values and our journalistic values. These are some of our many and great correspondents. And in the end, it's bringing their authority, all the aspects that make everything we do trusted by audiences, bringing those values into a form that is new, flexible, short, but we very much want to be, and I think is regarded by our audience as being as a piece of everything we do in BBC News. Thank you.
Hello everyone, bonjour, je vais faire ma présentation en...
I'll be doing my presentation in the French language. I will try to be concise so that it will not take too long. In our experience of live blogging at Figaro.fr, it's quite recent, so it may be interesting to find out more about the background of what they've done at the BBC. We decided to develop a live blogging tool in-house. We identified the need to keep track of events, and we did that as we could, and we have been doing that for years. But we decided to take time out at Figaro to develop a tool that's truly suited to the needs identified, bringing together all of the important dimensions so that journalists could work together. Those in the field, we need a lot of that for a good live, and outside journalists as well, to bring on the community of web users, tweets, and so on. So we took a good look at what has been done, what was being offered by external companies proposing live modules. And after much thinking, we made this choice, which we do not regret. We tried out this tool just before the presidential elections, just to tell you that it's really recent. How can I say this? This choice was made for 3 reasons. We wanted to have a customized tool suited to the needs of editors, and also to find the best user experience, the technology we use for that. I would have loved to show it to you, but anyway. It gives you a very fast response time, and web users who consult this tool have high expectations concerning speed of information delivery, which doesn't mean that you must be over hasty. Once the information has been checked, that is something that we may talk about when it comes to using live blogging. But anyway, once the information is there, you must be able to deliver it quickly and offer web users a quick response to their thirst for information. We wanted this live tool as well because we're thinking of new developments in our workflow. There's a huge amount of information generated in live blogging. We can have a lot of information. You must also think about how to reuse it, to curate it for other contents on the site. We could have, for example, a follow-up on a presidential debate or coverage of the election results. You can have up to 300 pieces of information, video, pictures. And it's important to think about how to reuse it, to curate it. So that's how we decided to opt for this tool. Based on this experience, one thing really surprised us. The live tool is made for hot news, but we realized that based on our experience, it could also be reconsulted a few days later on. Which brings me to the question of how live tools are used. I think what's essential, aside from the fact that it's a tool, is in what context it must be used. Many sites develop live tools continuously, and I'm convinced that that's very important. There's one question that we're still probing into, namely, what can we offer to web users who are consulting this type of specific content to see exactly what we can offer? What more can we offer to web users? And there's no single answer depending on the context. For the time being, we did it for the 2 rounds of the French elections and the debate between the 2 rounds. But each time you need to ask yourself, what can you deliver to web users? I'm setting aside live on hot news that are unforeseeable. But for example, for the debate between the 2 rounds of the presidential elections, we thought of a television debate. Lots of people will be watching that on television, on the net now. What can we bring to web users? And the answer was quite obvious. Not retranscribing what they said on television. Everyone watched that. But how could we allow them to understand it better for television users and web users who followed the debate, looking at the assertions made by both parties, going quickly from fact-finding, tools, charts, comments by specialists in the field? In other words, many different resources. But all of this added value we tried to generate, that's what paid off a few days afterwards when we realized that the live was very much consulted the very evening, the next day, and the day after, all day long. So that's very important. Another concrete example is that we launched a live for the presentation of the new French government. So at an early stage, you realize that when the list comes in, it will go quickly. You need to give all the information immediately. But what are people looking for? when the government makes its announcement. They want very quickly and very concisely a presentation of most of the persons who were ill-known by the general public, which meant working at an early stage to prepare. A lot of mobilization needed, and within 40 minutes after the announcements, we had concise biographies of the entire government. And that was very much consulted that evening and the day afterwards, because I think it was perfectly tailored to web users' needs. And I'm really insisting on this. Live blogging is very powerful. It also allows you to federate all of the forces you find in a newsroom, people on the spot. People can bring in charts, computer graphic designers. It mobilizes a lot of people. And if you want to do it well, in terms of the way we want to use it, that is really necessary. So it must be used either for very hot news or for expected events. You're not there to fill in. We're there to provide the service. And lastly, to conclude in this service, you have the community as well, answering web users' questions. We can anticipate their questions, but you can't know exactly what they want. So what we want to do, based on our experience, is to be more focused and give answers that web users expect. This is an important dimension of live blogging. Choosing comments, that's fine and good, but you must also be able to answer web users' questions, because it's really the user who stands at the heart of this experience. I thank you.
Hello everyone, my name's Kate Fairhurst, I'm VP International at ScribbleLive. I've been working around the journalism industry for the last 12 years, mostly focused on digital strategy and content monetization. Scribble are a Canadian company who specialize in providing tools to media companies so that they can write and edit, publish, and then share live reporting. As such, we're kind of sitting in the middle of the industry as an impartial observer to a lot of what's going on. And we've seen some people do some really cool stuff over the last couple of years. And it's some of those observations which I'd like to share with you today. So the first observation to share is the way that live has massively exploded over the last 12 months. After people initially dipping their toe into the market during 2009, 2010 with Scribble, over the last 12 months, it's gone completely bananas. Everybody's been like, right, need to do this now, let's rush. Although there have been a number of different news events that have underpinned this growth. For example, I'm not sure if you can see the date, but around March 2011, we have a big spike that's associated with Japanese earthquake and everything that happened around then, and there's some further spikes which are associated with the Arab Spring, and those are people starting to realize how that they can mobilize their journalists through do collaborative and social reporting and provide people with the immediate information that they need. We're seeing that management of content is falling largely into three buckets. Content creation is obviously the main one, but we've got some extraordinary people on the panel focusing on that, so I'm not going to go into it in too much detail, except to say that we are seeing that real time is fundamentally changing the way that people report news. But that when people have got their head around it, there's some really innovative stuff going on. And one example I'll share with you is around the New York Daily News and their storm tracker for Hurricane Irene. So when they found out that the hurricane was heading towards New York, they were a little bit nervous about how they were going to manage their reporting, if they were going to have resilient and stable resources in place, particularly around their website. And then they started thinking about how they could use live and how if they outsourced their hosting of their website, that would kind of solve one problem, but also if they sent their reporters into the field with mobile apps where they could report, that they could do dynamic and very immediate journalism, and also how they could collaborate with readers and answer their comments and almost turn it into a helpful resource for them for the information that they need. So a very quick snapshot of some of the content that falls within that. And you've got 4 pieces of content. The first is a curated reader question put into the front end of the system. The second is an immediate answer from the social media team. The third is a piece of video that's been shot by a New York Daily News reporter from the field and automatically filed back to the blog. And then you've got some wire copy underneath. So you end up with that kind of full, immediate, rich, social, collaborative and engaging experience that we all talk about that we want, but it's very hard to deliver. But much more than that, it was really cool. They had a great time. They found that from something scary, it became something that the readers were able to get what they wanted and the journalists really enjoyed. So moving on a bit more into monetization then, the good news is from our experience, we're seeing that people can make money from live. Not just because it draws and retains audiences, but because there's other monies available above and beyond that kind of traditional revenue. And we spoke earlier a little bit about the importance of sponsorship, and it's exactly the same with live. There are a number of different ways that we're seeing people approach this. This example is from Sky Sports around the French Open that's going on at the moment here, and this has FedEx branding attached to it because they're aligned with Sky Sports and the French Open. And this is just a subtle brand placing, but it's beneficial for FedEx, and of course, it drives revenues for Sky Sports. And we're seeing a lot of people starting to think about, of course, sports sponsorship, because of the 23 million of spend, 23 billion of advertising and sponsorship spend, 70% in 2010 was associated with sports, so it's perhaps the easiest money to unlock. But thereafter, regular TV shows, health chats, particularly niche areas where people find it beneficial to attach their brand. We're seeing that people are thinking more and more about how they can behave in that way. Something a little bit more further down the line, this is a Hearst local TV station, and what they're doing here is they're providing corporates with the ability to host live advertorial and have Q&As with their experts. In terms of the branding, all the way through it says that it's provided by Hy-Vee. It says underneath the timestamp that it's a paid advertisement. However, when you get into the content, there's no Hy-Vee advertising actually in the content. It's just expert comment and opinion from their staff. And so it's a kind of three-way beneficial service. For the readers, they get information, they get the ability to ask questions about what food should I eat to prevent cataracts. For Hearst, they get money, which allows them to underpin that news journalism, which is something we're all looking to do. And for the brand, they get exposure, and they get known as somebody who knows good stuff. So finally to syndication, and this is clearly a combination of monetization and cost saving. From the monetization perspective, it's allowing people to distribute their content to other people so that they can share perhaps a Canadian story with a company in a different country. And from a money-saving perspective, it's completely vice versa. You don't have to create your own journalism from scratch. You can take great journalism that comes from somebody verified. For this reason, we're developing a marketplace to allow people to do this on top of ScribbleLive, because we're seeing more and more that people sharing content immediately as a story is developing is very important. And associated with that, we've got some really exciting relationships going on with some news agencies to allow them to move the traditional model of fast, fair and accurate reporting and ameliorate it into dynamic, live, collaborative, and truly instant journalism. And one example of that, the first real example of that, was with the Press Association and the Royal Wedding. So this coverage was started by PA in their offices and out in the field, brought back through mobile journalism and other methods, feeds, back to the central office where it was edited into this live blog. The content was then added to by MSN and reader comment that went into the front end of the system as time developed and the event got really interesting. So just this one snapshot, you've got Danny Blackburn, who's a Press Association reporter. Below, you've got reader comment from Zambia, and below that, you've got the MSN Royal News reporter. So it's a blend of taking the rights access that news agencies can get that's really difficult otherwise to have, and then blending in your own comment and opinion. And it's something that's been really successful for PA, to the degree that last week that they announced that they were going to build live journalism on top of their traditional wire subscriber base alongside our technology to allow people to add to and edit the content. So that's a really exciting initiative for us, and we've got a couple more agencies who will be announcing the same very soon. So this all sounds brilliant. What now? Well, from the perspective of people starting off, we're seeing them do a number of different things. Firstly, they're just starting to play with the system, not around any particular key events, but just start moving the content and adjusting to how the workflows move and the kind of resources that are needed. Then secondly, we're seeing people looking at the big set piece events for the next 12 months, things like the Olympics and the American elections and many others, and they're thinking, right, well, we clearly need to do live for these events, so what's our plan going to be? And building much more structured thinking around those. And equally, those are the events that initially they're thinking about monetizing. Their commercial teams are creating sponsorship opportunities that they're taking to market with a fair window around, this is an opportunity for you to put your brand around our properties during this coverage. And that's a really whirlwind tour through some of our experiences. We've got a stand here, so if you've got any questions, come find me. Otherwise, thank you very much.
Hello. So, well, there's a question maybe to start is saying, if so many media are developing their live blogging and their live reports, what are news agencies for, and what role can a news agency play in this new way of reporting? This is a question we started to ask ourselves at AFP maybe in 2008, 2009. And I recall the first time we really decided to provide a special as it happens coverage dedicated for our web and mobile services was for the Obama's election in November 2008. Why did we decide that, and how did we work on this team? First, we saw that this type of minute-to-minute coverage was becoming more and more prominent on the websites, and I mean, a minute-to-minute coverage is really something a news agency is about. This has always been our role. Doing those short pieces, the way Mary was describing them, is really something you can find in a newswire. So how do we transpose that for web and mobile media portals, those who have editorial teams and those who don't have? So this is the starting point we had. We said if this kind of reporting is developing, then a news agency, AFP, needs also to think how we can enter that. And then this thought was the same that other big news agencies had at the same time, and we saw now with PA, AP, Reuters that we are not the only ones in this reflection. And then the second thing was also that we realized that on a lot of events, we had a lot of journalists on the ground, whether text, photo, videos. They were in fact gathering a lot of elements, and those elements, a lot of them didn't make it onto the article in the end of the day, or the TV report or something. So we had in fact a lot more to say than what we actually were publishing. So we started to work with newsroom to see how we could organize ourselves to feed those live reports. In the meantime, we would also continue to gather news for our traditional wire. And I really like the word Mary used also about exploring and experiment, because it is not something that we just came up one morning and decided we'll do like that, and we have the recipe and we do it. It is really something that we need to work on every day. Maybe some coverage, you see you need to have a dedicated editor to do the live report because the team on the ground is really too busy, communications are really too hectic, it's not possible. On another story, for example, I remember in Egypt, we had somebody dedicated in the Cairo office to gather all the contributions of all the journalists on the ground and to send them, whether by SMS, by email, by phone call, by any mean you can find, to the web and mobile team, who would then put together the live report. So this process has brought us to the situation we are now, where we can propose 1 or 2 live reports a week, either in French, English, Spanish, or the third. The last one was yesterday for the release of Romeo Langlois in Colombia, so it was in Spanish. And we really also worked to make it an editorial priority, so every time there is a big event coming, whether scheduled or unscheduled, the questions of shall we open a live report? Can we open it? How would we do that? Is really present there. It's becoming an everyday question for us. And then adapt the editorial organization to see who can contribute how. And now what's next for us? Because I think we are only half of the way. Today, the live report is in fact part of our web and mobile service. And the more and more we think now it needs to become part of our core service, of our wire. I think tomorrow, news agency wire, part of it will be a live report. Not only a live report, because lots of very important elements need also to be added to that. It is what we spoke before, contextualization, analysis, background stories, long interviews, writing, all those elements to understand what's important really needs to be there, but live report really go back in the core part of a wire service. And the live report today is not only text as a point of view for us, it's a live report also with images. So it means that a lot of photos, and we are also working very hard in reducing the time between a photo is being taken and the time it is being delivered to client. I think the closest time we had was 1 minute in the like kind of Olympic or events like that. Now we really want to have this very short time on everyday stories, so we can also have a lot of images in the live reports. Also videos. I mean, we need really to reduce the time between the moment video is taken and the moment it is delivered to clients. Even live broadcast also is really something that's important to go with live reports. So, and now we are also working on a new editorial tool that is going to be the editorial tool that will be used by every journalist at AFP. And really, in this tool, we want to make possible that a journalist, when he writes something, what he writes can be used whether for live report, whether for the wire, whether for the photo, whether for the video. So really, a conversion tool that can be a one-point entry to then the different outlets we want to use it for. And in this term, I really think that this new live report way of working, which in fact was an old way of working for a news agency, because we had this old format called running, which was really to describe a story as it happens. But the way now it has been taken up by all the websites, all the medias, and etc., is really at the same time challenging us, and at the same time also helping us improving our core service with all those elements I said, news as it happens, but also context, but also background, but also report, but also images, and really also making the best of the work of all our correspondents all around the world, which we are very proud of and which are really bringing a lot to the news. So basically, I make it short because it's better we can have questions after, but that was what I wanted to say. Thank you.
So, usually I am an organizer of conferences like this one. Exceptionally, I will be a speaker. Just because 1 year ago, when we created the Global Editors Network, there were two basic ideas. First, to work together, all platforms. Stupid to be blocked into silos the print industry, the broadcast industry, the pure players, including now pure players on mobile. They don't have website, they have mobile, just mobile. So this idea of to be cross-platform was obvious. The second idea, and it was more difficult to apply, was to say we want to create an editor's lab. What does it mean? It means that journalists are using tools, are using software developed by non-journalists. And sometimes it's great, but sometimes journalists could say, why not this functionality? Why not that? Why is it impossible? But they are blocked by technology, by software. And so here we said, we want to create tools developed by journalists. And we considered that it was a priority for a new association of journalists. And it is the reason why we created the Editors Lab in May 2012. Not alone, because here there was no money at all in this young association. As you know, at this period the membership was free, so money was near from zero in the association, and we asked Google to help us to sponsor this idea of Editors Lab. So I think there are 3 or 4 people from Google in this room, but nothing possible without this sponsorship of Google. And they agreed with this idea of free software. We are a community of editors. You have newsrooms. And here the goal was to create free tools. Not only a journalistic tool developed by journalists, but a free tool for newsrooms. And I think it is the main advantage of the tool we developed, Gen Live Desk. It is free. At the moment, you have very powerful tools, fantastic tools developed by BBC. We saw that, so it was very impressive. So big newsrooms can produce their own live blogging tool. New York Times did it, and so on. So The Guardian. And this afternoon we have this session with The Guardian. But you have also private companies. You have Cover It Live, not here today, and you have ScribbleLive. ScribbleLive producing very sophisticated tools, very good tools, no doubt. But what we wanted to do for newsrooms who cannot afford to develop by themselves this tool, or who cannot afford to pay private companies, that to say, here is the app, here you can now take it, implement it in your content management system, and just make it develop live blogging. So, and today it is the launching of the Gen Live Desk. So this first tool developed by journalists. We had meetings with Vorarlberger Nachrichten, we had meetings with The Guardian, with Le Monde, with BBC was involved. So all of them saying, yes, we can share views, we can share ideas, we can give you some guidelines here, do that, don't do that. And then when we had those guidelines, we asked SourceFabric, and here Douglas is one of the 2 CEOs of SourceFabric, and we decided to work. We decided to work with SourceFabric But before we asked a lot of companies saying, can you develop that? No, yes, so what is the cost, blah, blah. And finally, we found really the same spirit with Source Fabric. So Douglas will not only explain what is Gen Live Desk, but also the spirit of Source Fabric. So Douglas, you have the floor.
Thank you, Bertrand. My name is Douglas Arellanes. I am actually one of 3 founders of Source Fabric. Source Fabric is a non-profit foundation which develops technological tools for news media and then makes them available as open source. And we think that the open source model is actually very important, and there are quite a few reasons for that. I mean, as we've seen today on this panel, I think everybody's in agreement that live blogging is already a major part of news coverage, and it's here to stay. But at the same time, we all know that news organizations have to deal with limited budgets, limited resources, and this reality is something that we also have to work with. At the same time, we've got journalists who are asking for tools that help them do their jobs easier, and this demand for better administration is something that's very important. Now, what we do in Source Fabric is that we develop tools and then we create a community around those tools so that people, you know, we've heard already that various organizations will develop a technology tool in-house and then they have their own tool. In our case, what we do is we actually create consortia of like-minded organizations who take part in the development of the tools. So LiveDesk is one of these, and what we wanted to show today, and I can actually show a video of it. We don't have a lot of connectivity up here at the podium, so we're going to have to show a video of what we're doing right now. But what we've created is a tool for live blogging, which is free and open source, and is actually being used today. There are 2 bloggers in the back, and I'd like to give them a shout out by name. From the Swiss digital-first news startup Tageswoche, we have David Bauer, and also from Source Fabric, we have Adam Thomas. And they're in the back basically using this tool. So what they're doing is they're writing their posts, just like a tweet or whatever, and they click Save Post, and it goes into the timeline. Now this is pretty much the standard approach that most of these live tools use. What we did as well was that we decided to actually study a lot of the different tools that are available so that we can actually make some improvements on those things. So that we can take the best parts of a lot of these different systems and combine them together. For example, if you notice on the left-hand side of the screen, we have integration with Twitter, with Flickr, with Google, and a number of other tools as well. So what happens then is that reporters have the ability to curate their live content, not only coming from social networks, but also coming from their own reporters. Another very important thing that we have with the LiveDesk tool is the ability for the editors to create some context around what they've got. So this is where things like being able to do a Google search and then drag that over to the live stream also is quite useful. The same thing goes for any tweets that you have. So you might be able to see this live where people are putting things up on the Gen 2012 hashtag, for example, today. Actually, then you just take that and drag it over as well. Now, you can see this live on the Tageswoche blog, and if you actually check the Gen 2012 hashtag, those of you lucky enough to have some connectivity in the room, you can see this actually in action on a real live site, on the Tageswoche site right now. So the idea with this is that right now this is a very alpha version of the software. There was a journalist in Kyrgyzstan. We work a lot in developing countries, and this journalist from Kyrgyzstan says, "So what is it that you really do?" And I said, "Well, if you're James Bond, I'm Q." So you got the exploding laser pen and all that kind of stuff. And what we do is we make those kind of tools and we hand them out to people. Now the point is that this is an alpha version of the software, so this is very, very rough and very, it's unstable. But one of the calls that we want today, what we would like to actually ask you as Gen members, is to get involved in the process of refining the tool and making it really as great as it can be. So with that, what you can do is you can actually get involved in this process with us. We have an open call for beta testers and an open call for people to start actually using the software and getting involved in the process. So we're around, and I'm looking forward to actually talking with you. Tomorrow we have a master class where we'll be going into detail about how this actually works and what it does and all the cool things that you can do with it. So thank you for that, and I look forward to seeing you there.
It is an alpha version, but there are also Gen genes, in the sense that we ask SourceFabric to develop a tool that will allow to work together, different newsrooms working together. If we take this example of the French community, so imagine Le Temps in Switzerland, Le Monde in France, Le Soir in Belgium, working together on this jubilé. For instance, take this example of next week jubilé of the Queen in the UK. And they could, through this tool, they can work together, and evidently a news that is relevant for French people is not relevant for a Swiss. And so they can just click, say, I take this posting from Le Monde, I refuse this posting, so they can personalize, customize the live blogging, but they are doing the same story together. Imagine another story, a revolution in Syria. We are in a world of shrinking newsrooms. A newspaper, a radio, TV station, they can send 2, 3, 5 reporters, not 20. Imagine a tool covering Syria in French with 20 reporters, one in Alep, one in Hama, one in Damas, another here and here in small villages. It's much richer. It's exactly what we want to do. And so we want to offer that to editors, to the community of editors. And really thank you, Douglas, for helping us, for co-producing this software. And we can, so you say masterclass tomorrow, 11? Yes, I think so. Tomorrow 11, I don't remember, but tomorrow a special masterclass in Salon Chéret, just close to this room, and the software will be ready with the guidelines, with the brochure, with everything in September. So we miss the Olympic Games. It's a pity, but we will be ready in September. And at the moment, you can ask me, ask Douglas, ask Antoine Laurent, also in charge of the Gen Live desk, and so we are ready to answer your questions.
All right, well, thank you, wonderful panelists. It was a really wide array of very smart thoughts and best practices. I believe we have time for a few questions. Let me kick it off by saying we're seeing all these wonderful examples of how to immediately and speedily push information out, oftentimes as it's unfolding. And in so many cases, that's a good thing to do. Are any of you, and maybe Mary, you could kick it off, are any of you concerned at all about taking time away from context and quality and analysis and this deeper thought? The idea is that if we're all just watching as, Pippa's walking up the stairs, right, and all typing the same thing more or less, where's the room for the analysis and the careful thought? And does any of this come at a cost? And as I'm looking at you, I don't see that we have a microphone. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's a really good question, and it is undoubtedly a challenge for all of us. And in the end, it is about using the resources that you have to try and achieve both. I think it is really interesting to put together the session we had earlier this morning about the story, and then this session about live. You know, in the end, I think there's a very kind of deep human interest in stories, and stories are built out of details and unfolding snippets and facts and perceptions and observations and thoughts, and then people crave salience and significance and understanding. And so, as I explained when I showed the live page, one of the things that we are trying to do with that format is to pull in and have the flow of the emerging snippets, but also as we are building context, analysis, depth, perspective, judgment from our correspondents, put those in as well and link off to them, or indeed as we see great work being done by other organizations, pulling those in. As we have great comments, insights from readers, users, audiences, pull those in as well. But as I think about our new newsroom in the new building, I'm thinking all the time about these two aspects of what we do, and all the stuff that Jim talked about earlier around the New York Times and about depth and you know, long-form journalism and how that works digitally. It's exactly the same kind of thinking that we're doing at the BBC, because in the end, I think any credible news organisation has to go on being able to offer both.
Is it working? Yeah. I think obviously it is a very, very important question, and the challenge is that when you choose to cover a story live, you really need to have already a lot of elements of context in mind. First, this is this context that is going to help you make the decision of covering it live or not, because first of all, you have to know whether it is really a breaking event, it is really an event that will lead to something, or just like some event that will have no tomorrow. So that's I think the first element. And this goes with what my colleague from Le Figaro said before about preparation. I think once you're working on lives, you really need to be prepared. That means to have already gathered elements of analysis, of contextualization that will help you feed it. And the other challenge that is bringing also is the time that before maybe you were thinking that, okay, the event is happening and the analysis is for tomorrow. And you are really working in a rhythm of the second day analysis or the following day analysis. And this is finished. Now you need to build your analysis at the same time as you gather the breaking news. And this is where the challenge is, and where you really need to be prepared. You really need also to have some specialists, to have some professionals who really know what they are talking about. They know the history, they know the details, they know why, they know what's behind this story, and then they can give you analysis all of a sudden. So it's not just about watching somebody speak on TV or seeing something and describing. You really need to have this journalistic specialty, and this is where I think journalism comes back with its values and why it's very important that this is done by good professionals.
I will answer to your question. One problem we had, we considered at Gen and Source Fabric that when you read a posting, a live blog, 5.15, 5.16, 5.70, this posting, this user email, this tweet, they are relevant during maybe 1 hour, not more. And the problem is the wrap-up. At the end of the before the lunch, you don't want to read, for instance, 100 postings related to this conference. You just want to know what was relevant, what was interesting. It was interesting to read at 10:16 this person speaking, saying that. But 2 hours after, it is no longer relevant. And we didn't want to have 100 postings and navigating through 100 postings. And so, for instance, we decided, and it was an editorial decision, that we built some wrap-up, how to make a synthesis of the day, how to make a synthesis of 2 hours of debates, how to make a synthesis of this session, for instance. And here, for me, the question how to maintain analysis, how to maintain context is relevant for sure. But the problem when people hear when they are reading a live blog, they want a live blog. They don't want everything. They know that they are on a live blog. And the problem is to work the quality of the live blog. And not to say, we will add that and that and that. No. They are here not for reading a classical article, but for reading a live blog, for participating to a live blog. So you need to remain in this context.
Okay, let's take a question from the audience, please. You have one right here.
Thank you, Meredith. My name is Azu Ishekwene. I'm from Leadership in Nigeria. My question goes to Kate, and I was just wondering what your thoughts are about how you could help put us out of the misery that we have to cope with dealing with internet service providers. In Nigeria, where I come from, in the last 13 years, mobile phones have grown from 0 to 99 million this week. Now, the problem we have is monetizing the mobile phones. And the internet service providers, if you want to do a deal with them, insist on between 60 to 65% of what you make, of the income, that is what they want to keep. And if there are other agencies in between, they also insist on, say, maybe 5%. So you are providing content, and at the end of the day, getting maybe 30% for the content that you're providing. What are your thoughts about how we can get out of this misery? Thank you.
Okay, so my main piece of advice would be to look for money from corporates where you can get it, for the reason that if you can get revenues from people who've got money and cover their events in a completely impartial way, like we saw earlier, but if you can take those revenues and you can enhance your business in that way without getting hammered by the ISPs, then that will really give you a leg up. Another piece of advice would be to make sure that you're doing all the right things on a basic level. So if you've got a live blog, it holds people for a long period of time. So I once heard it said that the user engagement around a company's live blogs was on average 40 minutes. So, you know, your commercial people should be able to make money out of just basic advertising if they refresh the ad impressions every minute. You know, the multiples that you can get from that are extraordinary. After that, look at major sponsorship, look at kind of marquee events, but also look at ongoing content production, regular sporting events, something like that, that you can get somebody who's affiliated with the event on board with, and then that's just revenues that go straight into you, and you don't have to pass them on to anybody else.
Can I add something really quickly as well? One thing that we've actually implemented in the Gen Live desk is the ability to put ads inside of the stream. So usually with outsourced services, you have an embedded live blog. But in our case, it's actually being served directly to the content management system. And so because of that, you can have like the equivalent of sponsored tweets or sponsored advertising. This goal of a football match is brought to you by your beer, you know, beer of choice. So that's another way of monetization.
Okay, so in the interest of time, I've been given the so we'll be around at lunch. Feel free to ask us questions. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, panel. Thank you.